Welcome back to the world of Pokemon. Now, please tell me, are you a boy or a girl? Because I can't really tell from... You know what? Never mind. Just remind me what your name is first, because this town has, like, two houses in it and, like, a whole six people. I can't keep everyone's name straight. Can't even remember my own grandson's name. It's really, really awkward at birthdays. But all that aside, and the fact that I probably don't have a grandkid, actually, we're going to take a look at Blastoise, the mascot of Pokemon Blue, and the next of the starters. Pro tip, or quiz, whatever you want to call it, a little bit of TJOmega trivia. Turtles happen to be my favorite animal. Unfortunately, for some reason, Blastoise is also my least used starter in the games. I don't know why. As you can see, the big guy is cast in a very nice light blue plastic. Well, parts of him nice light blue plastic. The rest seems to be this pearlescent white that goes through the edge of his shell. And you will see a lot of paint gets added to that in order to make it look correct. It does look good though. The shades are spot on. Quite happy with that. You can see a little bit off-white in the claws, and that's about what I would expect. A lot of paint going through this shell. It's, of course, it's not one piece, but it's really hard to tell where the divisions in it are. It's extremely well done all the way around. Looks and feels very solid. Lot of yellow going all the way through the underside of the shell. A little bit of panel lining to bring out those details. And then to the back, a lot of brown. Now, I know it's not molded in brown, because I'm looking on the underside of here, and it's black plastic. So they were really going all out for this. And then you see a lot of airbrushing, just to highlight all the edges and details around, giving him some definition. It's extremely well done. Looks extremely good. I'm happy with it pretty much all the way around. Appearance-wise, this is probably one of the stronger of the D-Arts and Figuarts Pokemon. He definitely looks the part of the big water tortoise. Now, we take a look at the head. Big and bulbous, about what I would expect. Snout molded in, nostrils and all. Ears painted to the inside to bring them out. And some nice ridging around the eyebrows just to give him a bit more of an aggressive look, since he's fully evolved. He has he has a bit of anger issues now, because a lot of fully evolved Pokemon do. You can see the eyes painted up pretty nicely, right down to the anime eye shine right in there. Inside the mouth, a lot of red on top, which is hard to get the camera to illuminate, and a big pink tongue, which this time is not articulated, but the jaw does open and close, so at least you have that. The neck itself does have some articulation as well. It's got another one of those little plastic pieces to hide where the joint is and make his neck look a little bit more solid. And he does have enough range in there to look to the right as well as to the left to a certain degree. Also get a little bit more to the up, just in case he's fighting a flying type, I guess. But that will come a little bit more into play later. For now, we're going to just leave him looking forward and such. It's still kind of restricted because it's a big bulbous part, but you still get that rotation that goes all the way around. You get either the curious dog or the full-on exorcist look. Whichever one you prefer, I don't tell you how to play Pokemon. The arms, I would hope that these would be like big ball joints or something, and his arms would have a crazy range of motion, but unfortunately, they just kind of rotate there at the shell. So that shoulder joint is just for turning the arm all the way around like so. However, there's no molding here to indicate what direction is up and down, which means we can take advantage of that. In the center, the elbow is one big universal joint, which means we can rotate it around and bend it at our will, and then the arm can look like it's at any angle we want, which allows us to get pretty much any range of motion that this big guy should be capable of. So that's actually a pretty clever way of engineering him and making sure he's nice and solid. You also get that wrist rotation going as well. The ball joints on the claws give him a little bit of range in there as well. It's not a whole lot. It lets you do little minor adjustments and rotate them around if necessary, but ultimately not a hugely effective joint. But the arms themselves, they do work out pretty well. That said, that's about the end of articulation, because once the parts get super thick down here, you really kind of start going a little bit brick on me. Again, down here, the parts, there is a ball joint in there, and you can see the legs do have some give in most directions. Not a great deal, and you can bring the legs up and back depending on how you want them to be posed, and that's about it. There isn't any knee joint on this big guy. Legs a little bit too thick for that. And the ankles, there is some wiggle, so you can adjust the tilt a little bit, also back and forth. And they're also kind of double jointed, so you can also kind of bring the foot back and forward just a little bit, but it's not by much. You also, as you probably noticed, there's ball joints tucked away right there in the big claws, and all the claws actually. That's a really squeaky joint. That's actually kind of scaring me. I'm going to stop doing that now. The one thing that I would advise, and this just seems to be a running thing. This one on mine never stays in. This little claw always popped out. I think part of it is just how close it comes to the edge of the leg's plastic, and this one not so much, but for some reason that one just kept popping out on me. Just before the review, I actually used one of my reviewing lights to actually heat up the plastic and let me pop that back in. So a little bit of quick improvisational work for the review. Before then, it just refused to stay in. It might just be mine. Might just have been an assembly error. I don't know. But I have to tell you guys everything I notice on a toy. So with that out of the way, I guess we talk about these big cannons sticking out of his back, which of course is his signature element. Because I don't know how a natural animal evolves giant cannons out of his back, but hey, I'm not going to argue it. 'Tis a Pokemon world we live in. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Now, they also have a ball joint, so you can adjust them in multiple directions. They also have a bit of a hinge down here, so you can get them into directions you've never seen them in. So you do have plenty of range there. Now, the trick here is, of course, you can have them at a more typical angle. You can have them a little bit more pointed up, which gives it a little bit more of a military look, or a little bit more of like you'd expect out of like an anime with big shoulder cannons up. Getting them to point forward, you actually do have to angle his hips down and actually get him that way. And I'm going to show that off here in a bit. But if you want a little bit more range, the little caps on top actually do have a ball joint in them as well. So you do have a bit of range of motion, and they do give to a certain degree. I'm trying to figure out if they slide forward or not. On mine, they appear to not. So I'm either doing something wrong, or I'm guessing there's not the function that I would expect, which does make it hard to get these things pointed forward when you want to pose them in for a battle. But we do have options to allow that to happen. For instance, he also comes with a display stand. Now, like Charizard, he absolutely does not need that Tamashii stage arm that's attached to it, at least not for standard poses because they're so bottom heavy. However, rather than just holding up a flame or anything, there is a little bit more use to this. And I will point out, I do like these stands. Aside from how wide they are, you'll also notice the little pegs. So just like an actual Tamashii stage, there's little parts in here you can kind of pop out, little caps, and it gives you another spot for another Tamashii arm. So all of them can hold 4 display arms total if you happen to need that much balance for your posing. And because it's so wide, it allows them to work together to create, flying poses or anything. If you want to Gamera this guy, that is entirely possible. But the only reason he's really going to need it is in case you want to use these. His effect part is the Hydro Pump, because of course it is. Two of these big spirals of water blasting forth, done up in crystal clear plastic with a little bit of pearl white covering the top to give it a foaming look, which is a really nice effect, and it does look like an appropriately high-pressured blast of water. I would kind of prefer a blue tint to it, so it did match the color of the attacks in the show and the video games a little bit more, but that's getting really nitpicky. As it stands, it works out pretty well, and they work pretty effectively. I don't need a display for them. I don't need to plug them into an arm or anything. They plug right into the cannons themselves, and this is where I need to adjust the camera. So let's just pretend for the sake of argument, he's fighting two Beedrill at the same time and actually needs to fire in these directions. Let's just presume. So, of course, all the articulation still works, but how far you can bring them forward is a little bit suspect. For some reason, this one doesn't like to move as far forward as the others. This is the only time I've really needed the stand for this, because to get him firing forward, we're going to, well, let's open your mouth so you actually look correct. We're actually going to work those hips again. Come on. Work the hips, big guy. 1, 2, 1, 2. Jeez. I thought Pokemon training would be easier when I could just move all their limbs for them. Isn't that why we invented that Pokemon fighter that's coming out? So with that done, the arm does actually come in handy to give him a little bit of extra balance when you actually need to pose him firing his cannons forward. There's easier ways of doing this, but I'm trying to get this review done a little bit quicker than I did Charizard, because I tend to get wordy if you haven't noticed. But if you do want to have action poses like that, this is probably the best way of accomplishing it. Of course, it is the best way of accomplishing it. There's really not a whole lot else you can do with the stage. I'm trying to come up with something that doesn't quite block the view a little bit, but why planning is important before a review. Oh well. You do get the idea, though. The stage itself, once again, only proving to be so helpful on these guys. I really think it did best on the Mewtwo release, because that's one where I really did expect quite a bit more floating and flying poses and such. And hey, it also helped you have Mew floating around with Mewtwo, so that's actually where it came more in handy. So you get that, and then you get these for your complete package. And that, my friends, is the D-Arts Blastoise. It feels brickish, but compared to Charizard, it feels a little bit more appropriate. Again, the best articulation is in the arms, and while he doesn't have wings or a tail, well, he does actually have a tail, and it does rotate, so there. I feel he has a big strength over Charizard overall, in that the articulation he has works with the character's natural body shapes and lines much better than Charizard's do. The cuts in the plastic and all the little things we have to notice because he has to have articulation points don't really come into play nearly as much. Whereas I believe there are better looking Charizards around that size, smoother and a little bit more solid looking. This, I believe, to be honestly the best Blastoise you could have, aside from being posable. You really can't tell. Like, just about everything on him looks correct, even though there's a bunch of cuts in the plastic for joints, which really puts him maybe a little bit above Charizard for me, honestly. Not to mention, the big water blasts look a lot better than that little tiny flame Charizard came with. And be honest, that little flame is kind of pathetic compared to big bursts like that.